Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a question that seems simple on the surface, but gets incredibly deep fast. We're drawing inspiration from Robert Brandom's work, Tales of the Mighty Dead, to talk with some of history's greatest thinkers and ask, what does it actually mean to be rational? I mean, you probably think you have a pretty good handle on it, right? But as we're about to see, this is one of those questions that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries. And the answers? Well, they just get more and more powerful as you go.
So, to make sense of this whole journey, let's picture it as a kind of ladder. Each step we take up gives us a more sophisticated, a more useful way of thinking about what rationality really is. So, let's start climbing.
Okay, first up, let's start at the bottom of that ladder with the most common, most intuitive answers to our big question.
So, on this first rung, we find a couple of classic models. On the one hand, you've got the logical model. This one's pretty straightforward. You're rational if your thinking follows the rules of logic. You know, if all men are mortal and Socrates is a man, then Socrates is mortal. Simple. Then you've got the instrumental model. Here, being rational is all about picking the best, most efficient way to get what you want. You want to get to work on time, so you take the fastest route. Makes sense. But notice, both of these are really just about the structure of your thought, not the content.
And that leads to a really big hidden assumption. As Brandom points out, both of these models just take your beliefs and your desires as a given. They don't ask why you believe the sky is purple or why you want to build a house out of cheese. They only care about how you connect those ideas. It's kind of like checking the wiring in a house to make sure it's all connected properly, but not caring at all what those wires are actually plugged into.
And that weakness, it forces us to ask a really crucial question. What if we've been looking in the wrong place this whole time? I mean, what if rationality isn't some cold, formal set of rules, but something, well, something more social, more human? This very question is what pushes us up to the next rung on the ladder. And here, we introduce a new character into our story, the understandable outsider. With this model, the idea is that being rational just means being understandable to other people. Think about it. When you try to make sense of what someone is saying, especially someone you disagree with, what do? You instinctively look for common ground. You assume they believe a lot of the same basic stuff you do, that gravity exists, that you shouldn't touch a hot stove. And it's only against that backdrop of shared beliefs that their more out there ideas can even begin to make sense. Rationality here becomes a kind of successful translation. But wait a minute, there's a catch, isn't there? If being rational just means being understandable to us, doesn't that make our way of thinking the gold standard for everybody else? It kind of puts us in the judge's seat. This model points out that there is a standard, but it can't for the life of it tell us where that standard actually comes from.
And that problem, that question of who decides, it shoves us up to the next rung. And this, folks, is where things get really, really profound. This is where we stop seeing rationality as a thing we have and start seeing it as something we do.
And here is the core idea in a nutshell. To be rational is to play the game of giving and asking for reasons. It's not a state of being. It's not a feature of your brain. It's a social activity. It's a performance. It's a game you learn to play with others.
This whole view is called inferentialism, and it proposes something radical. That the meaning of a concept isn't its dictionary definition. No, the meaning is its role in that game of reasons. To really grasp a concept is to know what moves you can make with it, what it commits you to, what other things it allows you to say, and what it's totally incompatible with. Meaning isn't a label. It's a web of connections. Let's make this real. Take the concept copper. When you call something copper, you're not just sticking a label on it. You're making a move in the game. You're committing to the idea that it's a metal, that it conducts electricity, that it melts at a very specific temperature. Claiming something is copper gives you a reason to say, this wire will work. And, just as importantly, you're committing to the idea that it is not an insulator. The meaning of copper is that entire web of inferences, commitments, and consequences. Okay, this is a huge leap forward. But it just begs another question, doesn't it? If rationality is a game, who wrote the rule book? Where do all these connections, these conceptual norms that define words like copper, actually come from? To answer that, we have to take the final step up our ladder. We climb to the very top, to a view inspired by the great philosopher Hegel. And this view brings in the ultimate authority, the final judge, history itself.
Now, the best way to get this is with an analogy. Picture a judge in a common law system, like in the US or the UK. She's got a brand new, unique case in front of her. But there's no single perfect statute that tells her exactly what to do. All she has is a long history of past decisions, precedents. So what does she do? She has to look back, interpret that tradition, and pull out a principle, a norm, that she thinks fits the current case. But here's the magic trick. When she makes her decision, that ruling becomes a new precedent. She isn't just applying the law, she is actively shaping what the law will be for the next judge. She's both a creature of the past and a creator of the future.
And that reveals this massive shift in thinking. You see, the older view, let's say from a philosopher like Kant, saw concepts as a two-step process. First, we figure out and define the rule, and then we go out and apply it. But the Hegelian view, the one our judge is using, it collapses that into a single process. We establish and create the norms by the very act of applying them. Concepts aren't fixed, static tools in a box. They are living, breathing norms that we are constantly shaping every time we use them.
So, wow, after climbing all the way up that ladder, what does it all mean? Let's bring this home.
When we get to the summit, we can finally see the whole landscape. Rationality isn't some property that's just wired into our brains from birth. It's not something we simply have, it's something we do. It is a collective, historical, social achievement that is never finished. It's a practice that we inherit from those before us, that we participate in right now, and that we pass on, always slightly changed, to the next generation.
And this leads to one of the most mind-bending ideas from Hegel. For us, understanding ourselves actually changes who we are. We are the kinds of beings whose nature is shaped by our own self-conception. The very act of telling ourselves this story about what it means to be rational, it actually changes what kind of rational thinkers we are.
Which leaves us with one final, and I think pretty urgent question. If our concepts, the very tools we think with, are forged in the fire of past generations giving and asking for reasons, then we have to turn that question on ourselves. What concepts are we building right now? In our arguments, in our conversations, in our society? What precedents are we setting today? What tools for thinking will the future inherit from us? Now that is a question worth being rational about.